Our survivability has been our sustainability for many years. We were forced to go these ways with the amount of water and rainfall we get, and it's kind of fell perfectly into this sustainable world we live in today.
Welcome to the Farm Smart Podcast, presented by Nutrien Ag Solutions, where every month we're talking to sustainable agriculture experts from throughout the industry. As the leading source of insight for growers on evolving their sustainability practices while staying grounded in agronomic proof, Farm Smart is where sustainability meets opportunity.
We don't just talk change, we're out in the field helping you identify the products, practices, and technologies that bring the future to your fields faster. I'm Dr. Sally Fliss, Director of Program Design and Outcome Management for Nutrien Ag Solutions.
And I'm Dusty Weiss, and we're joined today by Kai Houchin, Precision Ag Lead at Nutrien Ag Solutions. Kai, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dusty. I appreciate y'all having me here.
So to start with, can you tell us a little bit more about your background? What's your role at Nutrien Ag Solutions, and how did you get there?
Yes, sir. So I actually grew up in Idalou, Texas on my family's cotton farm. I still help out when I can, but definitely in different capacities, not as much tractor driving, a little bit more financial decisions and stuff like that, which is awesome to come back and help. I started with Nutrien in 2016 after I graduated from West Texas A&M University. Go Buffs. And as a crop consultant there, I really enjoyed the digital part of the business. I really liked Echelon, our mapping program, which was just fantastic. But the digital piece really spoke to me. So in 2020, they offered me the position as Precision Ag Specialist or Lead for the South Plains Division. And it was a fantastic decision, and I'm very happy to be here.
Now, you're calling us from the family farm today, and I just wanted to call out for folks that are listening, they're not going to see the spectacular visual behind you there, but that's a pretty impressive collection that you've got in the background there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. My dad has been collecting toy and model tractors for about the past 50 years, something he did with his grandpa and something I wish to continue doing with my kids. It's something that's in our blood, in our family's history, and we just enjoy the farming and agriculture piece of this world we're doing today. So, yes, sir.
We love to see that model equipment back there, but what you've got behind you is essentially racks and racks and racks of these toy tractors and equipment, some of them still in the box. How many pieces would you say you got there?
Well over 500, I would say. Over 50 years of collecting, man, it can get pretty packed. But I'm glad we're able to have a place where we can display them. And hopefully one of these days we'll get to show the world exactly what all he's got. So,
Kai, in Northwest Texas, a lot of people think of oil production, but you guys also produce a lot of cotton, a lot of corn grain. And one of the things that you've been a key part of with our sustainable ag team is the data collection and implementing some of these tools that you guys have on the ground in Echelon and that we have in our Agrible platform. What are the challenges that being in programs that we're working with the South Plains Division on have helped these growers solve or help these growers think about differently when they have data in a platform like Echelon or Agrible?
I think one of the biggest things that really helps out these growers with these certain platforms is mainly some of the weather. Rain is one of the biggest parts in our part of the world. We, on average, have less than 20 inches of rainfall per year, but the timeliness is probably the biggest part of that. You know, we start planting cotton around May and harvest around November, December-ish, but we've got to have rain during that growing season. Our heat here can get well into the hundreds, sometimes over 110 degrees in August. So with Echelon as well as Agrible tracking all of this data, especially through the weather, helps these guys make better decisions. I mean, if we know that historically we don't get much rain in June, maybe that's something that we can combat with different fertilizers or seed technology. But the help with Echelon as well as Agrible being able to collect this data and help the farmers make better decisions, that's really what we're all about.
Yeah, Kai, I feel like scarce rainfall is going to be a bit of a theme that we discuss in today's episode, certainly with you calling from Northwest Texas, but also Sally traveling on the road in Arizona right now. Elsewhere in the country where irrigation is vital to crop production, we've heard growers worry that their access to vital water sources might be restricted or cut off. Now, you all draw from a big aquifer out there. Do you have the same concerns about losing access to that or having limitations enforced on you in Northwest Texas?
Absolutely. It's very concerning. Even if we were just to restrict some of our access to the Ogallala Aquifer, it would be very hard for us to make it work just because, like you said, Mother Nature is a big part of how we grow these crops, how we grow cotton consistently year in and year out, and how we make these yields. If we were to restrict some of this water to this part of the world, it would be very hard. It would be even harder to make some of the decisions that these growers have to make on a day to day basis. And I understand it's a big issue. We have to conserve water if we do want it to be sustainable, but we also have to continue growing very good crops. I mean, your food and fiber is very essential, obviously, for everybody, especially us in this part of the world. It helps our local economy out through Lubbock. So if we can just try to get a good balance between conserving the water, not necessarily shutting it off, but if we have to restrict, if we can get a good balance between that and using some of our technologies, I think that we can definitely make it work sustainably through this part of the world.
So, to bring that back then to that data collection piece that we were talking about earlier, what role can data collection in being able to not just say, hey, look at these conservation steps that we're taking, but actually be able to prove with numbers what sorts of conservation steps you're taking? What role is that data collection able to play in that process?
It's probably one of the biggest deciding factors for a lot of these farmers in this area. I mean, with the data collections, one of the biggest ones is Dynagrow, our Dynagrow seed variety, and how it's done an awesome job with drought tolerance. It's going to help out for us to make decisions on different parts of the world. You know, maybe you have 12 inches of rainfall or less, or maybe you have a little bit more. Well, these data collections with Dynagrow, certain varieties, we know we can position those in certain places. Along with that, I know Loveland's fertilizers have been huge with their technology. We're able to produce more crops with less water because of how efficient our fertilizers are, which is fantastic. A lot of these farmers in this part of the world, sustainability is a new term that's come around, but it's been kind of the same for us in survivability. Our survivability has been our sustainability for many years. We were forced to go these ways with the amount of water and rainfall we get, and it's kind of fell perfectly into this sustainable world we live in today.
Kai, another piece coming from the Northeast where we don't think about irrigation and water near as much as you all do because we get ridiculous amounts of water, not always at the right time in the growing season, but we tend to get plenty of water for our crops to grow. So when I started working with parts of my team that are down in your region, they talked a lot about water testing, and we don't think about water testing at all as a part of a nutrient management plan in most of the Northeast because we aren't irrigating. So how does some of these unique tests like a water test play into the recommendations that are being made in the field, and kind of just a little bit of information about how we use a tool like a water test in improving that productivity and efficiency per acre?
One of the biggest things, like you're saying, is that we test every well that we can. Sometimes we have 10 to 12 wells that will feed into one center pivot irrigation or drip system. So, first of all, just by doing the right testing at the right time, whenever our aquifers are being depleted, that's when we get the best results. Usually we find a lot of salts. Salts are a huge issue that we've got in our part of the world. So by testing each well, you can figure out maybe where salts are coming from, as well as go ahead and treat those wells individually instead of taking a shotgun approach to the whole farm. I think it's very important that we do take these water samples, that we take them to heart. And then it also goes back again to your Dynagrow varieties. We have varieties that are salt tolerant. So this water that you're consistently putting on throughout the growing season, even though you're not getting much help from Mother Nature, this water isn't the best quality. So we have to have varieties as well as other products that can combat that as much as we can. Starting with the water sample is a perfect way to get a grower on a sustainable system that hopefully he can last for many years to come and produce big yields.
Kai, you mentioned salt being a concern in the water as you get later into the season and have lower available water in the aquifer. I think another thing that we don't think about a lot, especially in areas of the country where we have good, plentiful water, is how that quality of water interacts with how our products perform. And so there's some productivity reasons to do that water test. Like you mentioned, the salt, is there a nitrogen concentration there we should be accounting for? But also, how does that water sample guide the product or practice you might recommend on that acre? Or how does it change the way you might use a product on an acre depending on that water test result?
Absolutely. Like you're saying, and like I've said before, the salts are the biggest issue. And so, whenever we're looking at salts and fertilizer, those are two things that go directly hand in hand. We've got to make sure that we're adding your carbon back to the soil as well. And we've got many products through Loveland, like Carbon, that really, really help with soil health. And that goes into your water. The water that you're putting on your soil directly affects your soil. We all know that. And so by these fertilizers that we're able to put on this newer technology through Nutrien for these growers, it helps out tremendously. They're able to actually raise crops in places where sometimes they were unable to. If you've got bad salts year after year that's allowing for poor drainage, sometimes some of these fertilizers or even acids such as infuric can be huge helps to these growers to get the land back fertile and producing again.
Well, Kai, hey, we've set the table with a lot of the unique challenges that you face in Northwest Texas, but coming up after the break here, we want to explore how these efforts are being helped by some of the sustainable ag programs that have been coming online in recent years here. More with Kai Houchin is coming up in a moment here on the Farm Smart Podcast.
Farm Smart is the core of Nutrien Ag Solutions' sustainable agriculture offerings, leading the field with growers to record positive environmental impacts while identifying and embracing new revenue streams. In leveraging practices and products and recording your outcomes, your reward for making informed agronomic decisions will be waiting for you in our digital sustainability platform. The data you input can help set a baseline, identify opportunities for continued improvement, and help qualify you for market access opportunities. We're here to maximize incentives and help ensure the legacy of your operation. Getting started with FarmSmart is easy. Log in or create an account with Agrible, then track your data and get paid. Getting started now means we can get to the future faster. FarmSmart, where sustainability meets opportunity. NutrientAgSolutions.com/FarmSmart.
This is the Farm Smart Podcast, presented by Nutrien Ag Solutions. I'm Dusty Weiss, along with Sally Fliss, and we're talking today with Kai Houchin, Precision Ag Lead at Nutrien Ag Solutions. And Kai, over the past few years here, as sustainable agriculture programs have been growing in profile, I've been wondering, have you been seeing an increase in growers coming to you for help with implementing these?
Absolutely. Quite a few of them have come forward. Most of the guys in our area are jump headfirst kind of guys, is how I'd put it. They are looking to survive any way that they can, and sustainability has been a good part of it. I mean, whether it's dollars per acre or even changing some of their practices, they have definitely come to me to help implement them. Most of them have seen farmers across the turn row that have changed their practices and have been profitable and made bigger yields, and they want to do it as well. So I've had multiple growers in the recent years come to me, hey, what's going on with this program? What can we do to get in, and how can we help? And it's been very good to see, the farming community come together as a whole.
So, Kai, as you have individual conversations with growers, what are the positives and negatives that they're expressing to you about either the programming or the data collection or the practices or the process? Just, one of the things we want to do as a team is figure out how to continually make these programs better year over year. So what's the good and the bad that you hear from growers or other crop consultants as you're out there working on our programs?
Well, I will probably start off with the bad. And the bad is just data collections. It's a tough, messy deal. It's not easy. You have to be detailed, and that can be difficult when farmers have a million different things going on. They're fighting the weather, they're fighting finances, and all the other things they could be dealing with. Collecting data is very hard to do. It's the last thing on your mind. But the good thing is we've stepped up with Agrible to make it so much easy to collect this data, as well as we've hooked up with John Deere, many other companies to link all of our systems together so that it's more of an automated system instead of having to manually go in and do that kind of stuff. And that's been the positive. We've worked with farmers together to make things easier and better for them, and it helps them know where they're at year over year. I mean, there are so many times where you forget you're in the air, oh, we made this one spray and pass, and I forgot how good it did. Well, this data collections really helps out with that. And Agribull made it fantastic and super easy to do that, as well as Echelon. And that's why I've been really happy with how farmers have responded to the negatives. They've turned it into positives that have helped them be more profitable on their acres.
Yeah, and I'll jump in and add this, Kai. You mentioned the data sharing with some of the equipment that's out there. Having spent some time in the equipment industry myself, and I'm not going to name brand names here, but a few years ago, 5-10 years ago, there were a couple of brands that were really resistant to that idea of sharing the data from their machines. And just to pile on what a game changer it is to have that smooth flow of data going from the machine into the data collection software and then effortlessly being converted into insights, actionable insights that people can implement on their farm fields. This is something that 10 years ago, folks in the equipment industry were kind of wringing their hands and saying, well, that's probably never going to happen. We want everything to be proprietary. But from your view in the field, folks pretty happy with the fact that that's the way that business works now?
Absolutely. With some of the restrictions and everything else that John Deere gives you with your account, you can make sure only certain people have access. The data sharing isn't as big of a topic in most of these farming circles, which has been really good. They're willing to share with each other. And then, like you're saying, they can correlate a direct product to an impact that it made on the farm, which has been hard to do in years past. Like I said earlier, you have so many different variables, not only the weather or how much water you can put on, but the quality of that water, like we just spoke about. That's very important to tie into some of these fertilizers. Maybe you're putting on the wrong fertilizer with the amount of salt you have. And we can make those changes, game time changes during the growing season that really helps out these farmers long term.
Kai, I think we're rolling into our third or fourth cropping season with some of these programs down in your division and in your area. How have growers who have participated from the beginning, what have they seen for changes? How has it gotten easier? What have they tried maybe that's outside of the programs that we offer directly to continue driving this efficiency and sustainability per acre?
I think one of the biggest shifts I've seen is no-till farming. The past 5 to 10 years, we used to be heavy listed in this area, row crops and all that kind of stuff. And we've switched to no-till. No-till has helped with our soil health, like we've been talking about. It helps with soil erosion as well. And cover crops. Those two practices have been really huge. It helps with our soils in this area. We have very low organic matter, and trying to build that up the best way you can is by leaving it alone, putting a cover crop on it, have something consistently growing, which can be difficult, with not very much rainfall. A cover crop can sometimes seem counterintuitive, but we've seen great help with soil health just by having, whether it's a wheat or a rye, growing during the winter to help out with that kind of stuff. So it's been great to see these guys come to the table, make these changes, and help with their yields as well.
Now, you said that a lot of the growers down in Northwest Texas where you're at, you said that they were headfirst jumpers, I think that you said, and certainly that's what we like to see. But not everybody jumps headfirst. Certainly in every agricultural community, somebody's going to sit back and say, I'm not so sure yet. What would you say are some of the biggest hurdles standing between those growers and adopting some more sustainable ag practices in your part of the country?
Well, there are a couple different hurdles. The first one and the most obvious is just capital, switching over equipment to switching your entire farming operation, basically from tillage to no-till is a big one. But then the second one, we've talked about it, is the digital aspect of it. Whenever you're talking to farmers that some of them may be older, and we know how that's kind of trending where younger farmers are coming in, it can be difficult and scary, frankly, sometimes to have all this technology. I mean, you've got computers, iPads, and then operating systems in the tractor, as well as some even in your vehicles now. It's hard to get it all together, but that's where I'm hoping I can step in, help these guys not be as afraid to jump into it, help them one-on-one. I think it's something that the ag industry has kind of fallen down on. And I hope that I can help through Nutrien combine some of this technology together so we can get through these hurdles and have more sustainable practices.
How long would you say it takes when you introduce a grower who was hesitant about the technology? You kind of show them how to use the iPad, how to use the software, all of that. How long would you say it takes usually before they're using it like a natural?
Usually after they have a big conundrum. I'll give you a perfect example. We had a guy that was very standoffish, and he finally tried some Terramar, a product we had. And through the data collections, I told him, hey, let's try the iPad. We entered it. Well, then 6 months later, when he harvested, he saw a huge yield increase, and he knew it was directly from Terramar. He had a huge conundrum. He was stuck in a pickle and couldn't decide. He finally figured out, okay, this product makes sense. And I did it by tracking through our iPad, through Agrible, through all of our systems. So usually after a full year, these guys are running, feet hitting the ground. They are just running. They can enter it simple, but it usually takes a little bit of a mishap before we usually get to where we need to go.
Well, again, Dusty, I think we've said it on every episode of the podcast. Data is such a critical part to everything we do on the ground, whether it's like you say, Kai, making those better decisions about the products we use, or it's just letting growers really see what it is happening on the ground. And then it's us being able to tell our story to those downstream partners of this is what our growers are doing and what kind of sets them apart in this sustainability space, and driving efficiency and driving land use and all of the things that we're able to get at through these programs. So how many of that last segment of adopters do you feel like you still have to bring along the spectrum? It sounds like we've kind of started to we're past the early adopters in some of this stuff, and we're kind of starting to hit that middle section of adopters. But are we starting to get at, or do you think we're getting at the growers that are just like, I am never going to do this. Don't talk to me about sustainability or digital data collection? Are we starting to break into that group a little bit after this amount of time?
I think so. Like you're saying, the early adopters have kind of gone through, and we've hit our stride in these middle guys. But these guys at the end, they can see across the turn row, and they can see that, hey, this guy's making it work. He's changing things. He's actually doing less work because he's not having to till as much or go over that ground as much, which is great. And so we've tapped into the last round of people that I think are going to be willing to take on the sustainability piece of stuff. And like I said before, in our part of the world, survivability equals sustainability. We've got to continue to do this to continue to make crops and have these guys succeed in our part of the world. So I think we'll get there. I think we're going to continue to grab more and more people, but it's here, and it'll be here for a while.
You know what's funny though, Kai? And in my experience at least, I've found that the people who kind of dug their heels in and resisted the longest and the most vocally, when they finally convert, often become the most vocal and the most in-your-face cheerleaders for a new piece of technology or something like that. And when you get one of them folks to flip over, man, they will be preaching to the congregation next year.
Absolutely. And we've seen that everywhere. Some of the last guys, the very last guys I would ever think do it, are now screaming from the rooftops, let's get in these programs and make it work. So it's been great.
Well, that's cool stuff. You're doing great work out there. Are there any new programs, Kai, coming online this year that growers ought to know about?
We do actually have one. It's a 2025 South Plains Sustainability Campaign, and you can talk to your local Nutrien rep if you want any more information about it.
Well, it sounds great. We really appreciate your taking the time to talk through all this with us here, Kai. Kai Houchin, he's the Precision Ag Lead at Nutrien Ag Solutions, coming to us from Northwest Texas. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Farm Smart Podcast.
Thank you all.
And that is going to conclude this episode of the Farm Smart Podcast. New episodes arrive every month, so make sure you subscribe to the Farm Smart Podcast in your favorite app and visit nutrienagsolutions.com/farmsmart to learn more. The Farm Smart Podcast is brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions with editing by Matt Covarrubias, and the Farm Smart Podcast is produced by PodCamp Media, branded podcast production for businesses, podcampmedia.com. I'm Dusty Weiss for Nutrien Ag Solutions. Thanks for listening.